going to hardship a lot of business. A lot of people were going to be subject to possibly losing their jobs. So we did, in haste, throw a lot of money and policy at the problem, assuming it was going to be short-lived, that we were going to get through this thing pretty quickly. I don't know of anybody early on that knew that sometime this fall we were still going to be seeing some record numbers and, a lot more deaths and what have you. So, but it's just gone on a long time, and the end is not in sight. So we still have a lot more work to do. The future relief that we do, if there is another bill, it's got to be targeted. It's got to be targeted to the right people for the right reasons. It needs to be temporary, i.e. that we just don't become accustomed to having this forever as a new program. And it's got to be totally transparent. So paycheck protection programs and employer support programs and potential liability reforms for businesses that bring their workers back, all those are going to be fundamental to whatever future program we do.
And also, to one of the bigger things that has come about just even this year is just police reform. We've seen some of the issues firsthand nationwide, and I think a lot of people, even now that some of the dust has settled on the conversation, will agree that for the most part, cops are an all right bunch. Now, there are some bad dudes out there, but I guess in terms of reform as a whole, what are some things that you want to see Washington try to do to kind of bring everybody together and to kind of quell some of the injustices that we see?
Look, I don't want to oversimplify this, but I will tell you this is a classic leadership issue. And if you look at what the unrest that's happened in some of the bigger cities, the Portlands and the Seattles and the Chicagos and those kinds of things, look, leadership failed our country in those cities, those municipalities, and in some cases, those states. I can, I put my mayor's hat back on when I answer this question. What was it like when I was a mayor? And what are the mayors of Arkansas experiencing right now? First of all, we all believe in the rule of law, and we support our law enforcement. There's not a place in Arkansas where you don't have total support for what the law enforcement community does to keep us safe, to protect and to serve, as their mission says. There are bad actors in these groups. And when you have bad actors in those groups, you got to weed those people out. You got to make sure that your forces are properly trained, that they're properly equipped, and that they understand, as I used to tell my police officers in Rogers, you are the first impression that a lot of people are going to have with this community and an encounter with law enforcement. So you got to respect people, and that goes back to training. So, and for the most part, our law enforcement officers across the state, county, city, state police, highway police, are all pretty well resourced and pretty well trained. Now, but back to the accountability of the bad actors. I favor, you ask about reforms. Look, I think people ought to wear body cameras. I think that's a very good technological advance that we ought to have. It protects both sides. The other thing is I think we need to have some kind of a registry where the really bad actors, the people that have really blown it in terms of abusing their badge and sometimes their weapons, that they're placed on a list and that we escort them out of the law enforcement business completely and they never come back. I mean, that's just the way accountability should work. So, and there's probably a lot of other things if we really drill down on it that we could do to enhance law enforcement. But by and large, Arkansas is a state that gives a lot of support and a lot of credit to the law enforcement, first responders, law enforcement personnel that keep us safe.
And possibly we might be able to drill some more of those things down here. Representative Steve Womack, the Republican incumbent. Boss, we appreciate the time. We'll do it again soon.
Jay, great to be with you.
Always good to have you in here. All right. Well, when we come back, we talk to the Democrat challenger, Celeste Williams. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
Multi-millionaire Congressman French Hill's taken us for quite a ride. Hill took nearly $3 million in campaign cash from corporate special interests and voted to hide details of a $500 billion bailout, protecting his special interest donors. While Arkansas small businesses struggled and workers lost their jobs, Congressman Hill looks out for himself and his corporate interest friends and left us behind. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
There are now more options than ever to enjoy tzatziki's. Our Mediterranean menu is full of healthy and original favorites that are available for dine-in, delivery, takeout, curbside, and drive-through at select locations. We've implemented safety procedures to protect both our guests and our crews. Order online at tzatziki's.com or download our app today. Thank you for your continued support.
It was bad enough when Joyce Elliott raised taxes in Little Rock, but now, with our recovery at stake, that would devastate Arkansas. And that's what Elliott would do in Washington, backing Biden's agenda, $4 trillion in higher taxes. And Elliott's got a plan that could raise payroll taxes by thousands more per year on the average worker. Joyce Elliott, another liberal who will raise your taxes. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back into Capitol View. The Democrat challenger to House District 3, Democrat Celeste Williams, joins us now. And really, for everybody out there, I really wish you guys could have gotten some of the pregame here as she's trying to make sure her kids are well taken care of, at least for the next 7 or so minutes here. I really wish we could have shown that to everybody. But Celeste, we certainly do appreciate the time. How you been?
I've been well. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, I guess speaking on wellness here, as a nurse, you kind of have an interesting background when it comes to, some perspective here. I guess in its totality here, how do you think the national government has handled this pandemic? And I know, too, a lot of people have said, this is unprecedented, and we've just kind of had to learn things along the way. But how do you think, as a whole, this thing's been handled?
So I agree. It certainly was unprecedented. And when I look at the way that we are performing and compare to how we are doing compared to other countries, I'm certainly really disappointed. There was a really good article that came out in the New England Journal of Medicine that really kind of detailed where we went wrong. And, we are a country with a tremendous amount of resources. This is the United States of America. We have amazing manufacturing capabilities. We have a huge amount of intellectual resources, experience, and expertise. A lot of that is housed in the CDC and NIH. And we've really, unfortunately, had expert recommendations flouted by the federal government and undercut. And, we certainly had a delay in testing at the beginning of the pandemic. We had tests that were sent out that didn't work. And so that was a delay, and we're still not testing enough. And we don't have adequate resources for contact tracing. There's been holdup in getting the supplies needed to actually do the test, whether it's parts of the swab or the reagent that is utilized for the test. And that has been really disheartening. Countries like Vietnam, which, no offense to the Vietnamese, but we should be outperforming them, and we're not. And, this pandemic has impacted all of us, from parents trying to help their kids with virtual school from home, or their kids are in school, and that means then that they're worried about kids coming into contact with their grandparents. And this really has been unbelievably hard on all of us. And certainly I've been concerned about just the pressure being ratcheted up on our health care system every day. Most of us feel like we are being asked to do more with less. Hospitals are already functioning with, functioning in the margins where they don't have a lot of extra financial resources. And when we had to shut down elective surgeries, that really economically hurt hospitals. And, you know, I think that there's a lot that we can do to improve things moving forward. And I would like to see a stimulus passed for those who are hurting because of the economic impact of the pandemic.
Well, let me jump in here real quick, because I hate for you to kind of keep going on here. But you mentioned the spending and all that stuff. I guess where would you think we find that balance of spending in the right places, obviously unemployment and things like that, but still having to be able to balance that out, thinking that, you know, can we necessarily spend our way out of this problem, if you will? I mean, is there something that's just going to have to fall through the cracks, in your opinion?
You know, I think, let's be real, that's a really big, hard question to answer. And so I've certainly spent some time talking to economists as well as how do we tackle this? And almost all economists believe that we have to do more, or that we're going to be in a much deeper economic hole than we are in right now. You know, we have record unemployment. We have record trade deficit right now. We're facing a lot of really big problems all at once. And, you know, I certainly think that we need to be planning ahead for the next pandemic as well, which is a terrible thing to think about. But, you know, certainly in times of economic good, we need to be building a nest egg so that we have the money to invest in the next big problem, whatever it is, which certainly it could be climate change related problems as well. But we shouldn't be passing tax cuts in a time of economic good that disproportionately benefit the extremely wealthy and large corporations. You know, my bias is always to really take that taxpayer dollars and reinvest them in taxpayers. You know, Amazon is paying $0 in federal income tax, and I want to make sure that we are reinvesting that money into everyday people.
And quickly here, we're kind of bumping up on time here, but I guess another big thing that has really taken shape here recently has been police reform. I know defund the police is sort of a thing was a big statement initially. Now it's kind of more reallocating funds for police. I guess in totality, what do you want to see done with police reform?
Yeah, so I've certainly spent some time talking to local law enforcement officers in my area where I live, and before this conversation even, they've talked about how a lot of the calls that they respond to are really mental health care crises. And I think that it is incredibly important that we invest in community mental health services, because whenever the police are being asked to respond to that, we've failed as a society to really take care of the least among us and to make sure that people do have opportunities for mental health care and addiction services. You know, these are big problems that we're really failing to address as a society. And when we fail to do that, then that disproportionately gets shifted to the police. And certainly, you know, when I watched that video of George Floyd, and in his moments of death, crying out to his mother, I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of us who are mothers. And I don't want anyone's child going through something like that. And even though he was an adult, he's still somebody's child. And none of us want to see something like that happen again. And so we need to talk about basic reform. You know, let's ban chokeholds. You know, you shouldn't put your knee on somebody's neck for 9 minutes. Like, that's unacceptable. And
hey, Celeste, I'm right there with you. I love the emotion here, but we're coming up on time here. But I do appreciate you coming on here. We will definitely bring you back in here again to kind of get into some more detail on some of the other big issues here. A Democrat candidate for Representative House. Let me not say Senate, not Senate. For Representative in District 3, Celeste Williams, we appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
You bet. And when we come back, we talk with Libertarian candidate Michael Collagias. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
I love shoes. You find them in the store, you know, they like call you, but they hurt. The best ones hurt the worst. And you're walking around going, I don't want anyone to know that I'm not happy. Stuck in the arch supports, and I felt so much better. I'd say Good Feet helped with all of my great shoes. They turned out to be something that actually works for me. My name is Ava, and that's my Good Feet story.
See for yourself with a free personalized arch support fitting at the Good Feet store.
Change takes courage. One of the first people to integrate her high school, Joyce Elliott knows that better than most. She spent 30 years as a public school teacher changing minds. As our state senator, she changed hearts, brought people together, and got results on healthcare and the economy. Now she's running for Congress to change the division that's endangering us all. And she's got the courage to do it. NEA Advocacy Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Running a business is difficult and expensive, but processing your mailing shouldn't be. Arkansas Mailing Services is here to help. As a secured facility with 24-hour surveillance, you'll have peace of mind knowing you're taken care of. Printing, folding, fulfillment, uploading to a secured FTP site for sensitive confidential files. Or even HIPAA compliant. If you need it, we'll take care of it. Check us out for yourself. armailing.com. Arkansas Mailing Services. The savings and service you deserve.
Here at the National Law Firm, Bear and I say, if you have a daughter and 2 relatives, you need to do some estate planning. What do we mean by that? Well, in these stressful times, think about your family. What would happen if you were no longer here? What would happen to your estate and everything that you have? Would it go to your family easily, quickly, with no cost? Come to the Nash Law Firm and find out how to do your planning today. Call the Nash Law Firm now.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back into Capitol View. Finally today we have our Libertarian candidate, Michael Collagias, who also happens to have the best beard of the 3 candidates. I mean, look at that thing. That's just glorious. I for one, appreciate the effort you put into that here. Let's just get right into it here, Mike. I guess from a national standpoint, you know, the pandemic has been a thing for a long time. I guess, how do you think the federal government has handled this? I mean, because obviously it's an unprecedented thing, and we've seen a lot of bumps in the road here. But is there anything that you would have changed in how we handled it?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I would have changed, and some of it's too late now for this one, but we need to be ready for the next one. This may or may not have been a natural virus. I don't know that we'll ever know that one for sure. Whether it is or not, there will be more natural viruses that come out that we've never seen before, and there will be some lab-created ones that escape that we're going to have to deal with. And we're not set up to deal with them well at all. Part of the reason is because our government got in our way. The thing about any response to any kind of crisis, any situation, the way you need to respond is based on good data. You have to have good information. And we had none and no way to get any. We have wonderful industry. We have wonderful business in this country that's capable of doing lots of great things when they're allowed to. In this case, we had the FDA and the CDC that made it impossible for them to do that. We had companies that had tests ready to go. They knew the virus was coming. They were already preparing tests for Europe so that Europe could use them. And the FDA and the CDC wouldn't approve them for use here until the CDC could come up with their own test. And by the time the CDC came up with their own test, we were already behind. And then when they figured out that the CDC test didn't work and finally let American business supply the tests, it was already far too late. It was too late for us to come up with a good response. We were already deep in it. So that's one of the things that we need to do is we need to get our government out of the way so that we can respond to things like this. Our government is a large bureaucracy. The gears turn slowly. When you have something like this, you need to move quickly, and the government doesn't know how to do that.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me jump in here real quick, Mike. Let me ask you this. Okay. You kind of mentioned the slowness of the federal government. They've been fairly quick in this past year in getting some stimulus relief out there. I guess for you, where do you sort of find that balance between, you know, helping people out in a very unprecedented situation, but also too not, you know, spending the national debt any further into the hole than what it already is.
Well, and our government failed there. I mean, we're already so far in debt. They had no money. We have no reserves. We'd already spent everything that had been budgeted, so everything from relief went into adding to the debt. So it was over $2 trillion in the relief package. All $2 trillion of that is going to be added under our debt, which means our grandkids have to pay that back. You know, they had no say in the matter, but they're stuck with it. And maybe almost half of that relief actually got into the hands of people that needed it. The other half was pretty much to bail out Wall Street. So that's what we're asking our grandchildren to pay for. And I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. Going back to the first question, we have certificates of need laws where it was illegal to have enough respirators in order to be able to deal with a crisis. We kind of panicked with the spending, and so we just kind of, you know, our Congress just passed and approved whatever got sent out there, no matter how many bad things were in it, just because they felt like they had to do something. And so in the rush to do something, we've done a lot of bad trying to make up for some of the other bad that we did. The more bad policies you have, the more bad decisions you make, it kind of snowballs, and you keep making more and more bad policies and bad decisions to try and make up for those. And at some point, we need to get that stopped, or we're going to collapse later on. What we're doing isn't sustainable.
Hold on, Mike. Let me jump in here. Let me get one more point in here for you, because we're bumping up on time a little bit here. But police reform, kind of a big thing across the country right now. Is there anything specific that you'd like to see done in terms of police reform?
Yeah, we're asking our police to be the front lines in a thin blue line, if you will, between the government and the people, and we're using the police to kind of oppress the people instead of doing their job. And we need to quit asking them to do something that's not their job, putting them in that position that's kind of created an adversarial relationship between the police and the people that they serve. We're violating the Fourth Amendment rights. We're violating Fifth Amendment rights. We're even violating First Amendment rights with a lot of what we do in modern policing. We need to stop doing that. You have a right to petition your government for a redress from grievances. That gets taken away when you have qualified immunity. So I would support Justin Amash's bill that would eliminate qualified immunity. No knock raids. You have warrantless searches and seizures. You know, that the Constitution spells out if you have probable cause, you go to the court, you get a warrant that specifically spells out who you can seize or what you can search, and then you go from there. But we don't follow that. We search and seize without warrants and then try and figure it all out later. And that's created a lot of problems. It's created a lot of hostility. It's leading to deaths. It's leading to violence. I mean, the country's literally burning now. We're killing each other. And we're not really fixing the problems that are causing that.
And Mike, let me jump in here. We're kind of, like I said, we're bumping up on time here, but we certainly do appreciate the time that we have with the best beard in the game, Michael Collagias, the Libertarian candidate for House District 3. Boss, we certainly appreciate the time. Let's do it again soon.
I appreciate it. Anytime.
You betcha. And we are back to wrap it up after this. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
I'm Joyce Elliott, and I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I'm old enough for Social Security and Medicare, and as you can imagine, as a retired teacher, I count on them. Fred Hill has a secret, too. He voted for cuts to Social Security and Medicare to fund a huge tax break for the wealthiest like himself. I approve this message because Fred Hill may not need Social Security or Medicare, but Congress needs more people who do.
Hello, I'm Mike Rainwater, and I applaud the efforts of KARK and Fox 16 taking a stand to create a safer Central Arkansas through their Victory Over Violence campaign. At Rainwater, Holt & Sexton, we do our part, so each month we feature a difference maker. We give $1,000 to a group or organization that truly makes an impact on the lives of others. It'll take all of us to declare victory over violence.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Empty desk, but not empty hearts. I certainly do appreciate you joining us today. That is it. We are back with an all-new Capitol View next week. Make sure, as the graphic says right there, you get the Capitol View podcast wherever you consume your podcasts. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.